for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
S-I-C-K.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. With Tony Marinaro.
55 seconds left in the penalty, a minute and 27 seconds left in regulation time. Boston 4, Montreal 3. Lafleur coming out rather gingerly on the right side. He gives it into Lemaire, back to Lafleur. Oh!
The sickest Montreal Canadiens podcast.
You're in the ball!
Sports entertainment like no other.
Rejoint, on lui fait perdre la rondelle, une passe devant. Et c'est le dégagement et ce sera la victoire des Canadiens. Stanley pour les Canadiens, le 23e de l'histoire.
You found the dogs! John, you found the dogs! He found the dogs! And all together, they worked a young team to the top. And now, a 24th Stanley Cup banner will hang from the rafters of the famous Forum in Montreal. The Canadiens win the Stanley Cup!
Brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. Driven to be different. LaBeat.tv. Embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination. It's gonna be sick.
Marinaro, the Sick Podcast on this Wednesday, February 7. How is everyone doing tonight? Thank you for watching us on YouTube Live, on Facebook Live, on Twitter Live. Thank you for telling your friends about it. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for sharing. And we hope you're going to enjoy what is yet going to be another edition of the Sick Podcast. Eric Engels of Sportsnet and Sportsnet.ca coming up in about a minute or two. Not before I talk to you about Energy Transportation Group, a partner in this venture, a leading full-service logistics provider serving all of North America, driven to be different, and we love them, and we are happy that they are on board. We also love these guys behind me right here. La Bitte at TB, brewed in Quebec, a winner of a dozen international awards. La Bitte at TB offers quality microbrewery beers made with premium ingredients for everyone's taste. La Bitte at TB, embrace your true nature. And also brought to you in part by Playground. Discover a world of luxury at Playground. Explore their new 30,000 square foot expansion with thrilling games, gourmet dining, and live entertainment located just over the Mercier Bridge, only minutes from downtown Montreal. Playground experience the Strip without the trip. The Montreal Canadiens off for the next couple of days in terms of games anyway, that is. They'll be back in action on the weekend when they're going to host Dallas on Saturday afternoon at 1 o'clock. And host St. Louis on Sunday afternoon at 1 o'clock. These are the famous Super Bowl matinee games, of course. Without further ado, now I'll bring him in. Eric Engels, what's going on with you?
Well, first off, I'm happy I don't have to apologize about the Monahan trade.
No, you don't. Why don't you have to apologize?
Well, I said, if they don't get a first-round pick for him, I'll tell everybody I'm an idiot, and I'll let everybody call me that. So I'm happy that day didn't come.
I said the exact same thing, Eric. So, but with all due respect to members of the media, and I
usually
know
when you say with all due respect, it means you don't respect people.
No, I respect them, but I want to say this, okay? I want to say this. I know who was very outspoken about the Monahan trade and what he would or wouldn't fetch. Eric, I think that when you live in the city of the team that player plays for, and you get to watch him day in and day out, practice in, practice out, game in, game out, talk to the players in that locker room, talk to the management team, know what he means to the team, I think you have a better understanding of those who aren't living in this city or covering the team as to what his real value is.
I think that's fair, but also, when we talk about the insiders that are out there, guys like Elliot, who I work with, who, jokingly
Elliot's
said
amazing.
Elliot's
amazing.
Yeah, he was, jokingly saying I was wearing my red, white, and blue pajamas, predicting that Monahan would get a first. They're gleaning information from the market. Also, they speak to people in Montreal, but they're gleaning information from scouts, from GMs, from assistant GMs outside of Montreal. And those opinions are just as important, right? Like if you're sitting in the market saying a certain player's value is this because you know them intimately and what they provide to the team in the market that you're in, you see them every day at practice, you speak to the people around them, that opinion could vary from what the rest of the league perceives and what the way the rest of the league sees it. So I think, when you heard leading up to the Monahan trade, some people say, I don't know if this team or that team or any team will give up a first-round pick for him. It had to do with the perception that he's not necessarily legitimately a top six forward. And teams that are giving up at this time of year, if they're going to give up that important currency of a first round pick, they want to ensure that they're going to get a player that can play in their top 6. Now, one of the main reasons why I felt very confident, if not felt that it was a guarantee that we're going to get a first round pick for Monahan, was A, the market forces for sure. I knew there was a lot of teams that weren't going to get Lindholm and would want a player like Monahan. And B, when you look at the history, there's a lot of bottom 6 forwards, middle 6 forwards that have gone for first round picks over the last number of years. And we went through that last time we were on together. Yeah. So anyways, I'm happy. Yeah. Neither of us have to come out here and say, hey, we were wrong and we were stupid. It'll happen eventually on something, but we've been pretty good. I think both of our records are pretty good in terms of predicting what this player will fetch, player X or player Y. And I think Ken Hughes, since you and I have not had a chance to really speak about this, I think he hit this trade exactly where he wanted to hit it, which was, into the bleachers. Like this, you get a first round pick. And I think there's a lot of people around town, and I've spoken to people around town who are like, you're better off getting a prospect that can play for them soon and this and that. You got to remember what Kent Hughes has done over the last couple of years. He has taken multiple first-round picks and traded them for the exact players you're talking about that can help you sooner. And now he has 2 first-round picks this year. He has 2 first-round picks next year. He has 1 in 2026, and don't be surprised if it ends up being 2 by the time we get there. And this is how he is accelerating the rebuild for the Canadiens. It's a big part of it. And so I would be looking out for what's going to happen come this summer, because it's going to be pretty interesting.
Having said that, I've talked to a bunch of people who were somewhat underwhelmed with what the return was, because when they saw Elias Lindholm get traded for a player who scored 39 goals last year and had like 70 points, who's a 27-year-old winger, traded for 2 former third-round picks who both are defense prospects, a left-handed defenseman and a right-handed defenseman, one who's 19 and one who's 21. I think a 4th-round pick and a 1st-round pick. A lot of people that I spoke to were a little bit underwhelmed with what Kent Hughes got. Now, we knew the injuries were a factor. We knew that Sean Monahan has been injured for the last 3 years, and we also knew that his contract was going to be up at the end of the year. But still, knowing that information, some thought that Kent Hughes was going to be able to get, at very least, that 1st-round pick and a prospect. Now, I know you talked about those who thought that he wouldn't even get the 1st-round pick, but here in Montreal, there were some who thought that he was going to get the 1st-round pick and the prospect, and they thought the trade was underwhelming.
Well, let's just, first of all, assess the Lindholm trade, for a different player. I think we can all agree that Lindholm is a bona fide top 6 centerman, whereas Monahan is not. He's a middle 6 center who can play in your top 6, most likely on the wing. And I'm not taking anything away from Monahan, because I think his value is absolutely there. The other part of the Lindholm trade is Kuzmenko. You talk about his goal production last year. He also came with a contract that is 2 years worth $11 million, part of which has been paid this season. And he's been a healthy scratch for most of the year in Vancouver, in and out of the lineup. Kuzmenko was a cost in this trade. He wasn't part of the acquisition. He wasn't one of the benefits of trading Lindholm. He could end up being that if he can find his way to being productive while not costing the Calgary Flames as many goals as he ends up factoring in on. But he was a cost in this trade. They were asked to take that player back to make the money work. As far as the return on Monahan, like I said, Ken Hughes, if the market was there to pay a legit prospect that is NHL ready or further along in his development, I'm sure Ken Hughes would have been interested in that. But he had to set the price at a 1st-round pick, and that's exactly what he got. And I think if people are underwhelmed saying, well, Winnipeg is going to finish, between this range and that range, it's more about having those multiple assets. Because you know what? A 1st-round pick and its worth at the deadline is very different than its worth on the draft floor. And this will be the last year, for a while at least, that the GMs are on the draft floor. But man, are you in a great position when you're a guy like Kent Hughes and you've got 2 of those picks sitting in your pocket going into the draft, one of them potentially in the top 5 or potentially between 5 and 9. And don't forget all the 2nd-round picks he has as well, because what Kent Hughes can do with this draft, he could do what he's done of the last two and trade picks for guys like Newhook and Doc, or he can couple his late first round pick, which will be Winnipeg's pick, with a second and move up in the first round and end up with one pick that's between 5 and 9 and another that's between 10 and 15. This is a flexibility that GMs are clawing for when they get to that draft floor. It doesn't have the same worth when you're talking going ahead of the trade deadline, because obviously teams are loading up and they don't think about, they think about what they're giving up for sure. But when you get to that draft floor, you'd be amazed at how much more worth a first round pick is than it is in February or March when you're looking 6 months down the line, 5 months down the line, 4 months down the line.
Points all taken and all noted. If I could respectfully disagree with one thing, I think you said Kuzmenko was a healthy scratch for most of the season. I think he was
not
a healthy
most.
Scratch for 5 or 6 games top.
No,
it ended
not
up
most.
being from the third week of December to somewhere there in mid-January, where it was well documented that his style of play was not Rick Tocchet's cup of tea.
It's semantics in the end, because there's nothing to disagree about the fact that Kuzmenko's inclusion in the trade was not because, they wanted a hot prospect that could replace Lindholm. He was a cost. And it comes
a lot of money there. Yes.
Calgary got compensated for taking him back. That's where the extra prospect comes in, where the 4th round pick comes in. So you have to be able to understand what that actual trade was about before you start saying, they got this for Lindholm and Montreal got this for Monahan. We're not talking about the same players, number one, and number two, even though they play the same position. You have to assess what the elements are that are in the trade. So
actually, it's too bad that Sean Monahan was as injured as often as he was over the last 3 or 4 years, because if you take a look at where Lindholm was drafted and you take a look at where Monahan was drafted, I think it was same draft, 1 pick later, and you take a look at their careers and their point production, it was actually very, very similar, but the injuries obviously set Monahan off. Anyway, Monahan with a defeat to show for his first game with the Winnipeg Jets, unfortunately, shut out in Pittsburgh versus the Penguins last night. And the Montreal Canadiens, if you thought they were going to be demoralized last night in their first game after Sean Monahan, because after the trade, everyone was taking to Instagram, but wishing him well. We were hearing a couple of interviews. A couple of guys seemed pretty devastated that he was gone. But I think that Mike Matheson is one of the guys that set the tone in all this when he said, hey, you know what? If you think that we're going to stop playing here just because some people don't expect us to make the playoffs or Sean Monahan's gone, I can tell you that I'm going to go balls to the wall the rest of the way. And I think that set the tone. And I have to tell you this, without being a great team on paper, that was a team that played a very tenacious style of hockey last night. A don't give up. Look, yes, I know the Capitals peppered all kinds of shots at Montembeault in period number 2 and in period number 3. But the Canadiens had every reason in the world, you would have think, to come out a dejected, demoralized group in period number 1. They came out flying. So
that was Matheson. I was talking with Matheson in the locker room and just said, how can you be the best version of yourself between now and the end of the season, especially, after this smack in the face from management that you're 9 points out of the playoffs here. And then there's a realization Monahan's traded 5 weeks ahead of the deadline. He said, I that's my competitive nature. I will go balls to the wall all the way. You could tell me we're not making the playoffs tomorrow and it wouldn't change anything about my approach. And that's the reason why he wears an A here. I want to go off before we get into that game here on the
go off, Eric.
On Matheson.
What time we make this
if
show?
You are out there, if you are out there and you truly believe that the Montreal Canadiens should trade Mike Matheson, I really don't know what you're thinking about. I think you're dreaming or envisioning pie in the sky, NHL, EA, NHL Sports 24 kind of trade proposal. Like ahead of the deadline, you think a GM out there is going to say, here's my 2 best offensive prospects and a first round pick, and I'll take Mike Matheson. Because honestly, he's the most valuable player to the Montreal Canadiens, at least on their blue line and arguably on the entire team in terms of what he's doing.
He's the guy who gets the most ice, so he's obviously the most trusted player by Marty Sandler.
He's the guy who gets the most ice he's the guy who gets the most ice on any given night. He's their best player, and it's not like his play is just going to fall off a cliff. He set a career high last year, and he just established a new one this year in 1 more game. He's got 32 to go, and we'll see where that gets to. And I'm looking at him, and I've said this on your podcast before, and saying, when that contract gets near expiring in a couple of years, I'm looking to re-sign that player. I'm not looking to re-sign him to be my number one defenseman, but I'm looking to re-sign him and keep him in the fold to be a guy who can play very reliably on your second pair and provide something that not a lot of other players will be able to, no matter how good they are in the prospect pool. So I just think people who think move him now while his value is at his highest, the proposition doesn't work, because no team is going to give up what he's actually worth to the Canadiens. That's the truth. It would take a team saying, we're going to give you the best prospects we have, both of them, and we're going to give you a first round pick, and we're going to, like, it becomes something that is out of a fantasy. And fantasy trades, I don't know if you looked at the NHL trades over the last 10 years, they don't happen. It just doesn't happen. If there comes a time in 2 years from now where Matheson has priced himself out of Montreal, it will still be an extremely difficult decision for the Canadiens, because if he's that good and that valuable, he's going to be 32 when his contract expires, I think.
Well, Eric, I will cross that bridge when we get to it, because there's still so many questions that are unanswered in terms of what's Lane Hudson going to look like? How's the development going to keep on going for Struble? At what point will Caden Gooley be? But I am prepared tonight to tell you this and give you a prediction right now. Mike Matheson will be a Montreal Canadian for at least the next 2 years. So it wouldn't surprise me if the development of the other players goes so great that in 2 years from now at that trade deadline, Matheson is traded. But for now, I'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But
you're making the best point. You're making the best point because
he's going to be a Montreal Canadian for at least 2 more years.
You're making the best point because why wouldn't you use that time to evaluate what you have before you make a decision that ultimately is not going to bring you the same value as to what the player is bringing to your team? I mean, this guy has he's been unbelievable. And if you want to sit here and say, well, defensively is this and his giveaways, and he averages 26. Go look at the giveaway stats in the NHL. The top 10 will be the guys who average the most time in the NHL. It's also the worst kept stat in the league. Like, it is horribly kept. Their definition of a giveaway changes in every single building. He's a dominant player. He's a really strong player.
Anyone who thinks that Mike Matheson is a defensive liability is an idiot. Okay. And I'm basically for this reason. The Montreal Canadiens were the worst team in hockey 2 years ago. The Montreal Canadiens were probably the 5th worst team in hockey 1 year ago. 1 year later, the Canadiens have had Kirby Dach out for the rest of the season since period number 4. They've had Christian Dvorak out for the rest of the season. Alex Newhook has missed 3.5 months. David Savard missed 6 weeks. RV Pinard missed about 15 games. Caden Gooley missed about 4 games. The list goes on and on and on and on. The Canadiens were average going into the season. Imagine minus all the injuries. And so being a very average team and you add to that all the injuries, they become below average. It's only normal that they're going to spend probably more time in their own zone than in the offensive zone. And Mike Matheson, who plays 27, 25, 26, 27 minutes a game, is going up against the best players on other teams. The 3/4 of the league are better than the Canadiens. And that's it. I mean, add it all up. I mean, what do you want? He's going to be a minus player.
I think we get
more than any other defenseman on the team, too.
I think it's so easy to get hyperbolic, and that's a tendency within every fan base, not just the Canadiens one. Am I going to sit here and say that Mike Matheson is the best defensive defenseman in the NHL? No. He's not near it. The thing you look for in an offensive defenseman is that their offense mitigates whatever issues they have in their game. If Victor Mete could have provided more offense for what his skill set was and what he was able to do, you could look past the fact that he had trouble defending in front of his own net and in the corners. Right? Like, if all those things that should have added up to more offense for Victor Mete in Montreal happened to add up to offense, you'd look past the fact that, okay, he's not going to beat somebody up in front of the net and he's going to get beat in the corner sometimes. That is why he had a hard time sticking in Montreal and had a hard time sticking in Toronto and Ottawa. And, he's still trugging along. I love Victor Mete, a great kid and has a skill set that is there. Mike Matheson, the offense that he provides more than mitigates whatever his defensive liability is. And his liability factor is way overrated for all the reasons you just said, Tony. But also just on the eye test alone, it's just he's a much better defensive defenseman than people give him credit for, and it has a lot to do with the work that he did in Pittsburgh, coming out of Florida, and what he did in his first year in Montreal, and how he's built on it this year. He had a rough 7-8 games towards the start of the season where it was kind of like, okay, the decision making is pretty strange here. He has a brain cramp here and there, but man, what he brings not only makes up for it, it totally overwhelms any of the bad. So I just think anybody who's sitting there saying trade this guy and you got to trade him, and this is not how it works, and it shouldn't be what you want either.
He's not going anywhere for at least 24 months. All right, okay. Now I'll say this. So many other good stories last night. Suzuki's one of them, a 3-point night. He's on pace for 73 points, the highest of his career. Slavkovsky, I think, has, 14 or 15 points in his last 18 or 19. In his first 2-goal game in the National Hockey League last night, he was absolutely on fire. He looked like Ovechkin, and Ovechkin looked like Slavkovsky 1 year ago. Samuel Montembeault was a wall again. But since we're talking about Mike Matheson and a defenseman, I think we can have a really good discussion about this next defenseman, okay? Arber Xhekaj. 2 months ago, George Larac, and he said it here on the Sick Podcast, and he also said it on BPM Sports Radio, in which he co-hosts a show, Larac et Gonzalez, between noon and 3 p.m. on 91.9 FM out of Montreal, BPM Sports. George Larac said that he was starting to think that the Montreal Canadiens and Marty St. Louis were denaturalizing Arber Xhekaj, making him scared to make a mistake, making him scared to take a penalty because he would pay the price because he went to Laval. And then once he got recalled, he took 3 penalties, and he felt the need to apologize to the coaching staff the following day. He was a healthy scratch that next game, yada, yada, yada. Eric, when George Larac said that to me, I said, okay, George is talking with his heart here and not with his head, because George has developed a friendship with Arber. We know that he spent some time with Arber Xhekaj and Mike Pizzetta and gave them some tips, some advice, and a lesson or two as to how to defend yourself. A couple of months has gone by since George made that comment. And when I watched the way he played last night, and Marty St. Louis might be really happy with the way Arber Xhekaj played last night. He got an assist. He was a +1, and he didn't take any penalties. But if Arber Xhekaj doesn't hit that post last night, Eric, I don't even know he's playing in that game. And once again, some might think that's a good thing, because if you don't notice him, it means he's not making mistakes. But I'm starting to see what George was saying a couple of months ago. Like, Arber looks like the guy who's really scared to make a mistake. And I know the Canadiens have a coaching staff, and they have some people in that organization who I'm sure would welcome mistakes and know that they're part of the job. But why does it feel like there's a different rule for this guy over everyone else? Am I seeing something that's not there here? Or did you see a little bit of what I'm saying? Or
no, to me you are, but I'm going to put it into context. And I think it's great that we disagree, because honestly, it wouldn't be that much fun if we agreed on everything. And I do agree with a lot of your opinions. And I actually have a feeling I understand why this perception is going to grow as we get out there. And I want to take it away from Xhekaj for a second and put it on Cole Caulfield. When Cole Caulfield wasn't scoring as much, I think he had 8 goals in his first 30 games. People were looking at him and saying something's wrong with Caulfield and this and that. And, we're trying to turn Caulfield into something else. And now he's forgetting how to be a scorer and this and that. This is a similar process that Xhekaj is going through right now. And I'm going to say one thing that I think should be abundantly clear to anybody. Nobody wants Arber Xhekaj to be better, aside from Arber Xhekaj, than Marty St. Louis, the Canadiens coaches, and management. They want him to be the best player he could possibly be. And not right now, but like a guy that they can rely on in their top four realistically over years and years to come. And you're right. If you watch last night's game, if Xhekaj didn't get an assist, you might not have noticed him. And some people would say that is a good thing. And I understand your perception that that's not necessarily a good thing when you're looking at a package like Arber Xhekaj and what he can do physically. But I think it's a good thing for right now. And this is what people need to wrap their heads around. Because the reason it's a good thing for right now, because he needs to stabilize his game before he starts reincorporating and naturally getting back to that person that he is. And I don't think he's going to lose himself in the process. I watched Xhekaj's game last night. You talk about the assist. I know he only got about 13 minutes of ice time. That was and a lot of people, some people came at me and saying, man, you know, like he finally played a really good game and he only plays 13 minutes. And it's like, well, Mike Matheson and Caden Gooley got stuck in the second period for 2 marathon shifts. They played 4-on-4 in the third period. And there was special teams situations that limited him and Kovacevic's ice time, including Kovacevic being in the box for 2 minutes. I'm not that worried about that. It's all logical. But I like the stability in Xhekaj's game last night. I like the fact that I didn't notice him as much, because I'm telling you, as he raises that floor, as Marty likes to say, and that was his floor, being stable, being steady, being unnoticeable, and not making any egregious mistakes and not taking any stupid penalties. As that becomes the established, consistent Arber Xhekaj that you want to see in the NHL, all that other stuff that makes him special is going to rise to the top. And we saw something similar happen with Cole Caulfield. Okay, he wasn't scoring goals. He wasn't scoring points as much. He had 8 goals and 20-something points in 30 games. And now all of a sudden he has 19 points in 20 games, and all that other stuff is standing out. I wrote about Cole Caulfield last night, and you know what I wrote about? His all-around game. You want to get excited about that saucer pass he made to Nick Suzuki? The real excitement is where he was to pick off the puck before he made that pass. It's the game away from the puck where he's improving something that was a weakness. And these individual progressions, whether it's Caulfield, Slavkovsky, or Xhekaj, is as important as what you saw in the team not dropping the ball with Monahan gone. This is going to bring the Canadiens to where they want to go, because they don't want to just be talented and exciting and look at what Arber can do physically. They want to become a winning team, and this is how you do it. And okay. I understand the concern. Tony. I understand people are concerned about Arber losing his nature. You're going to see his nature come through if he establishes this floor and this stability.
This discussion is going to continue because I think I got a couple of points here. I have to admit, when you talked about a comparable, I had no idea that you were going to bring up Cole Caulfield, because you would not think that you would compare Caulfield and Xhekaj's situation. And I love it, by the way. I wasn't thinking about it at all. But the second you said it, though, there's a couple of things that stood out to me right away. Eric, when Cole Caulfield was scoring less and Marty told everyone, I want to make him a better player, Cole Caulfield, for the most part, was still playing on that number 1 line. When they changed up the lines, he went to the number 2 line. He was still playing between 16.5 to 19.5 minutes per game. He was still playing on the first wave of the power play. Arber Xhekaj's minutes continue to go down and down and down. Jaden Strubal's minutes continue to go up and up and up. Strubel yesterday, Xhekaj played 12:29. Strubel played 17:57. That's 5 minutes and 28 seconds more than Xhekaj. When Strubel arrived with the Canadiens, he started off at 10 minutes. Gradually, they built them up. And it just seems like things are going backwards for Xhekaj in terms of minutes, in terms of swagger, in terms of mojo. You don't see this?
I do, but I also see it in a different light than you do. You see it as a negative thing. I see it as this is just the natural confidence of the player that's been affected by some of the things that have happened, from the injury to coming back to having a wake-up call and being sent to Laval where he didn't expect to be, to having to process that and build his game up in Laval. One of the things, and you've been around professional sports longer than I have, Tony, but we've watched them our whole lives, and you're a bit older than me, but man, you look younger. Honestly, like confidence, and you could take it outside of professional sports too. It takes a long time for confidence to strip away, and it takes a long time to build it back up. It's not a given. You don't become confident just by looking yourself in the mirror and say, be confident today. That's not how confidence works. And
I love where this is going.
And I don't think the Canadiens are stripping Xhekaj of his confidence either. I think one of the things that was really key, and before I went to Mexico last week, I wrote an article about how the best thing for Arber Xhekaj is going to be this break, and that he might actually benefit from it more than anybody. Okay. They could have sent him down to Laval to play 2-3 games after the 2 he played in Montreal. They could have done that.
So I had a
what would that have done for his? That wouldn't have been good for him.
I hear you. Okay, so now what? I had a boss who I loved. His name is Wayne Buse, and in my first year of radio, maybe even my first couple of years of radio, I was not very good. And his boss, the general manager, the late Lee Hamilton, was thinking of firing me and told me I had a month to pick up my game or I was gone. Unfortunately for Lee, the day that we were supposed to meet, he died 4 or 5 hours earlier. And Wayne brought me in his office to tell me that Lee had passed away. He had a terminal disease and no one in the office knew, not even Wayne. And Wayne looked at me and said, I'm not going to let you go. I think you're going to be a star one day. So go back on and just do your thing. I know I'm comparing radio to professional sports here, and I shouldn't be because it's apples and oranges. But you talked about Xhekaj and his confidence hurting and the injury and getting sent back down to Laval. Do you think the best thing for Xhekaj's confidence was after he picked up a couple of penalties to have to come in the next day to say sorry to his coaches, and instead of saying, it's okay, son, get back on the horse, that he was a healthy scratch the next game?
Well, that's what hold on.
Really the best way to handle it?
Hold up. Xhekaj apologized of his own volition. He knew it was unacceptable what he did. Marty St. Louis told him, hey, forget about it. Let's go have a good practice. You'll play a good next game when it comes. You got to also live in reality. Xhekaj's confidence is in a certain place. And I think the frame that the Canadiens are kicking him while he's down is misguided. It's just, and I don't want to, I feel I can tell people are going to say, oh, you always defend the Canadiens.
Yeah.
I'm going to repeat. Nobody wants Arber Xhekaj to be a better player other than Arber Xhekaj than Martin St. Louis. Nobody. Maybe Stefan Roby. Okay?
I hear you.
Confidence has to be dealt with in terms of where it is at, what state it is in.
Yeah.
The Canadiens are communicating with Arber Xhekaj. They're not just saying, hey, you're not playing tonight. Like, they know what they want to see from him. And you know what? I wrote a tweet last night. I don't want to, call this out. I wrote a tweet saying this was a step in the right direction for Arber Xhekaj, this game that he just played. And the underlying numbers and the assists that he registered only outline that. And the first person to like it was?
His mom.
No. It was Adam Nicholas, the development director for the Canadiens, who spent a lot of time working with Arber Xhekaj over the last couple months. And I'm just putting it out there to say,
I like Adam Nicholas.
And there's nothing not to like about this guy. He's full of passion and knowledge. As he builds a stable, trustable game at this level, which, by the way, he just turned 23, and last year was his first year in the league, and he is 70 games into his career, and everybody should just chill the hell out about him. As he builds this stability that he needs to have in order for the other stuff to shine through, it will shine through. That's why I brought up Cole Caulfield to begin with.
And I'm happy.
I understand you're not comparing those two guys.
No, but let me make something. Let me make something. Yeah, let me make something clear, Eric. I love Marty St. Louis. That will never change, ever. He can, he can join me on the podcast and tell me I'm an idiot, and I'll still love him. And Marty St. Louis wants to win every single hockey game he's going to coach. And right now, on paper and on the ice, Arber Xhekaj is his least reliable defenseman of the 6 that were there last night.
Well,
and that's
last
why
night.
he got but the reason why Mike Matheson's getting 27 minutes a game and more so than anyone is because the coach feels he's the guy he can trust the most and put him on and all that stuff. Okay. Clearly the coach on maybe not one night, but over the last whatever amount of time on the totem pole, Matheson is on top. Xhekaj's on the bottom right now.
Where was Xhekaj last year? Where was Xhekaj last year?
I would say he was somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You get what you give.
I hear you.
Don't worry. He'll get back there if he.
No. And I understand.
He's going to get back there.
I understand all that. And I also understand that after Arber takes 2 bad penalties versus the Islanders, the coach has to make some kind of a statement, because if he doesn't make the player a healthy scratch, then it kind of gives everyone a reason to go out and take bad penalties. And
I don't think it was just the penalties. If you watch that game, the way he played, and then watch the game before it, there was a lot of shakiness in his game. And that's what we're talking about. That confidence, even if he picked up his game in the AHL, that confidence took a bit of a hit. And it's going to take time to build it back up. And you have to build it back up in a bit more of a sheltered role, and you have to put stack games together. Last night, Arber Xhekaj played a game that he can stack on top of. He can say, this is a template for me to earn more trust and earn more rope. And the more he earns trust and rope, the more you're going to start seeing the real version of him. Because I think if anybody out there, and this is my last point on this, if anybody out there...
Listen, I think it's a great discussion. I was playing devil's advocate for a while here, but I think it was good.
My last point is this. Whether it's George LaRocque, whether it's you, whether it's anybody out there, if you think Arber Xhekaj is going to completely lose his personality and his what makes him special and what makes him unique, just because he's going through, I wouldn't even call it a down, I would call it a part of his progression as a player, I'm willing. That's another bet on top of the Monahan bet that I made a couple weeks ago with you. I'm willing to bet we're going to see the real Arber Xhekaj and the Xhekaj we came to know and many people came to love. He will come out as he establishes this more reliable floor in the NHL. He is not gone. He is still the same personality, and he's a confident, strong young man, and I think he's going to end up being a better player from all this, like many players who have gone through similar things before him. People forget. Like, it's 70 games. He just turned 23, and this is the hardest position in the world outside of the net to establish yourself as a regular. Caden Gooley, who everyone is obsessed with in Montreal, has had ups and downs. Like, he has had ups and downs. He has had issues struggling with his confidence, moving the puck at times. It's Marty always says, you hope to be able to connect the dots, but the line isn't straight in terms of progress. All these kids, I think the expectations got out of whack because they all started in the NHL last year.
Eric, Caden Gooley has had ups and downs, but he didn't really change the way he played, and he wasn't sent down to the Laval Rocket, and he wasn't a healthy scratch. These are things that happened to Xhekaj.
I know
the discussion, right? I know we're talking about different players, by the way.
But it happens, Tony. It happens depending on what your performance is. Talk about Caulfield not getting docked. Not moving for the first or the second and this and that. Like, go back a couple of years. He was on the fourth line.
Yes. When Dominic Ducharme, he was on the fourth line and had 1 goal in 30 games. Yes, you are right. And was also
by the way,
Laval, by the way.
I know everybody wants to blame Dominic Ducharme for everything that happened with Caulfield, and then a magic button was pushed as soon as Marty St. Louis came. And I'm not saying Ducharme is blameless in that situation, because there were times where he could have given him a lift and a bit more confidence to do what he needs to do. But Cole spent a week in Wisconsin before Marty came here. He was stuck with COVID or whatever it is, came back to Montreal a little bit refreshed and a little bit more ready to actually start putting in the work that he needed to put in to do what he needed to do and get back on the scoring trail. And I'm not saying Marty didn't have a big influence in him picking it back up, but the players themselves deserve the most credit.
Of course they do.
For when they do well, and also when they're not doing well. That's
But credit to Marty. Credit to Marty who never put Cole on the fourth line, because, once again, if a player is struggling with his confidence and he's a big-time goal scorer, you start putting him on the fourth line. And I understand sometimes you try and shelter players, and sometimes you say, you know what, I'll put him out there against fourth liners, or I'll put them out there against the third pair of defensemen. Maybe he's going to end up scoring in those situations, but sometimes it has the opposite effect. Maybe sometimes the player says, Is this what am I a fourth liner now? So anyway,
but you're right though. Cole Caulfield and Arber Xhekaj are different players and they have different statuses in terms of what the potential is in this league.
Speaking of fourth liners, Condotta, Gignac, Pezzetta, RHP, these guys and third/fourth liners, they really played a good game last night. They really played. They're still once again, they're not the biggest players. They're not the strongest players. They're not the hardest hitting players. So they don't have that kind of identity in that way. But I saw things from those guys that I haven't seen from a fourth line in Montreal this season all that much. There was some jam there. There was some sandpaper.
A lot of heart. I like what I saw too. I'm going to say this. If you had to pick a couple players on the Canadiens where these last 33 games are as important for them as anybody, Raphael Harvey-Pinard is a guy I'm circling. And I love the kid. He's a great kid, and his attitude is unimpeachable. And he tries as hard as he possibly can every single night. But he's a ways away from where he was at last year. I don't think anybody expected he's going to sustain a shooting percentage of nearly 30%.
No.
But the finish hasn't been there, and he has finished at every level, by the way. He has scored goals. He knows how to score goals. And the confidence hasn't quite been there. It's been stripped away a little bit, and it takes time to go back up, especially with an injury in between. And these are normal kind of developmental curves for second-year players in the NHL, much like Xhekaj or Harris or anybody else you want to pick. This kid, this is a very important 32 games remaining on the schedule for him. And
for Ylonen
to see some consistency from him in different departments outside of the effort, which is always going to be there, because he's going to be in a real battle to keep a job in this league if he can't find another level than what we've seen so far this season. And I'm just being real about
Ylonen too, by the way. You'd agree with that for Ylonen too? To a lesser degree.
There's something about this player. All the skill is there. All the skill is there. The details, which have been elusive for most of the season, continue to be. And this is the worst possible time for them to be that way for Jesse Ylonen, because Brendan Gallagher served the second game of his suspension last night. Was it the second game of his suspension? I think so.
It was his first, was it not? He got suspended right before the All-Star break.
Who did he hit? I can't even remember now.
Pelech, the Islanders.
So it was a game after that? They played Pittsburgh.
Yeah, the second game, correct. They played Pittsburgh right after, correct.
So this is Jesse Ylonen's, this is his chance. This is his chance to show that, all the work he's been doing this year has sunk in, and he can potentially supplant a player or two that are really fighting hard. The guys that you just mentioned, Pezzetta, Condotta, and this and that. And so far through these two games, and he's got three more to really show it, who you pulling out of the lineup when Gallagher comes back? It's him.
Yeah,
I hate to say that.
You get the feeling that with the Ylonen and the Canadiens, it's not going to last long.
The skill is there, but it's just they're little. And I'd love to be able to pull out a couple of examples, because I think when we say details, it's broad general talk. Like last night watching the game, he goes in for a forecheck and slows up before hitting the guy and ends up on his butt. There's just little elements, when to release the puck coming in to start the forecheck. If you're in a 1-on-2, 1-on-1 situation, instead of trying to make a move and giving it up at the blue line and having it come back down the Canadiens' throat the other way, when to make a bump pass coming out of your own zone. Just little small plays that when you put them together, they make a big difference in a game and help you establish, like we just talked about, that floor. Sorry, my dishwasher is going off making noise.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
I look at Slavkovsky as a counter example here, okay? Look at all the little details that have developed in his game, all the stuff that if you looked at him a year ago, those were the biggest reasons, that the absence of those little details, you would have looked and said, this is right in the NHL. Now, those weaknesses have become strengths for him, and all of a sudden, look what's happening. Oh, that one-timer is starting to come. Oh, that pull-in drag shot into the net. he's allowed to work on those things in practice now because he's putting himself in the right spots to do it. He's tracking back and creating a turnover that Caulfield took advantage of from the work that he's done to be in better position. Ylonen, this should have been his biggest focus all year, and I'm not seeing progress. I'm not seeing progress in those departments, despite the skill being there, because he has NHL skill. It's not even debatable.
No doubt about it. The Canadiens are looking good in their handling and decisions and everything. All the work that they put in with Slafkowski, for sure, who I thought had a monster game last night with a couple of goals, 3 shots in that hockey game. Nick Suzuki set the tone for that hockey game, I thought. 2 goals and 1 assist in that game. He's on pace for 73 points, which is a career high. When you say number one centerman, do you think points or you don't think points? Does a number one centerman have to have X amount of points to be considered a number one centerman? Or if Nick Suzuki stays a 65-point guy his entire career, would you be willing to say he's a number one centerman?
I swear to you, Tony, the minute you said number one centerman, the very first image that popped into my mind, and words evoke images in your brain, is Patrice Bergeron. That is the preeminent number one center when I think of a number one center. I want a guy who can do it all over the ice. And I know it's been exhausting listening to comparisons between Nick Suzuki and Patrice Bergeron since Nick Suzuki became a Montreal Canadian, even when he was drafted in Vegas. And I don't know if Nick Suzuki is ever going to be as good as that player, because I consider that player to be the best center we've seen in the NHL in the last 20 years, not named Sidney Crosby. But those are the guys I think of first. When you ask me, I think of Sidney Crosby and I think of Patrice Bergeron. I think of Ryan O'Reilly in his best year in St. Louis when they won the Cup. I think of Nate McKinnon and the way he's doing it right now, and the evolution in Connor McDavid. But I just named 3-4 guys before I got to McKinnon and McDavid, and Matthews is unbelievable. He's the best goal scorer. But we're down to, I people complain about Toronto media mentioning Matthews so much, and people shoving it down everybody's throat with that. And how do you not get it? This guy is the greatest goal scorer in the game, and he's unbelievable. His talent is through the roof. But give me Patrice Bergeron. If I had to win one game tomorrow, I'm taking Sidney Crosby and Patrice Bergeron before McKinnon, before McDavid, before Matthews, some people might think that's insane. But I think Suzuki is more in that mold than he is the Austin Matthews mold. I think he's more in that mold than he is the McDavid.
Suzuki plays better hockey without the puck than Matthews.
He's never. I think Matthews has really improved in that.
Yeah.
Especially if you go back and look at last year's playoffs, and even against Montreal, where Marner was really dragging down that line, Matthews played pretty well. It's just, if you give me one game to win the Stanley Cup,
listen,
I know who I'm taking, and I know what type of player Nick Suzuki is developing into, and it's more that. I'm not saying he's going to be that guy. I'm not saying he's Patrick Bergeron. I'm not saying he's Crosby. He's that style of player more than he is.
He's in that category, in probably the second or third category of great players who some of them are ahead of him.
Tony, I have a question.
We all know what Austin Matthews brings to the table. I mean, he shoots the puck harder or better than anybody, and 60 times a year it goes in the net.
Tony, I have a question for you.
Tell me.
45 points in 50 games for Suzuki. You said he's on pace for 73, right?
I believe so, yeah.
What do you think he finishes with?
80.
You think he's going to finish with 80?
Yeah.
So he's going to have a few multi-point games. He had 3 last night, and he's going to have a few more of those.
They're a one-line team, Eric. Now he's going to be on the ice the whole time. And when at one point they're going to be out of a playoff spot, which I think at that point we might even see higher scoring games, and they might open it up. So listen, I don't know if it's my heart or my head.
I don't think they will. I don't think they will.
I don't know if it's my heart. It's probably my heart talking that I'd like to see him hit 80. But he's on pace for 73. He's going to go above 73, in my opinion.
Okay.
He'll be above 73.
I'm going to agree with you there. I think he will too. Okay. I don't know if he's getting 80 if he planned. This is obviously contingent on him playing 82 games. But if he scores
340 something in a row,
if he scores 74 or 75 points this year with Kirby Dach out the entire, are we willing to concede that Nick Suzuki absolutely has the potential and probably will be a point per game player at some point in his career?
I believe so.
So then we could end that debate.
Then again, there's others who with a different school of thought who will say, well, if Doc would have been there, some of the points that Suzuki's getting will not end up being points.
Oh, I think the power play would have been better from the start. I think he'd already be a point per game player this year if Doc was there alleviating some of the pressure that's on Suzuki on a nightly basis. I think he already has more than 50 points in 50 games.
If you take a look at Nick Suzuki's ability to put up points going into the National Hockey League and everything he did in the OHL, I believe that at one point he will be able to do it at the National Hockey League level. Over 100 points, no. Point per game, yes.
I got to say, I think it should be extremely important to Canadiens fans to see that happen, and I get it. But man, if you look at the player this player is turning into, what he's doing all over the ice, that should be much more exciting than 6 or 7 more points at the end of the year next to his name. That should be the ultimate goal. And like I said, when it comes to Xhekaj, Suzuki, Caulfield, Slafkovsky, whatever you want to goalie, Marty St. Louis, I think the most admirable quality is how he has gotten these players to buy into developing themselves into complete players. That's what he wants because he knows that's what wins. And, you could overrate winning Stanley Cups, that it takes 23 players to do it. And, just because one has a Stanley Cup next to his name, it doesn't make a difference in this and that. I think it's overrated when it comes to trades. Oh, he's trading for a Stanley Cup winner. Some players are bit part players in that.
Yeah.
But you cannot overrate the value of having that experience to understand what it takes. Whether you were a huge part of it or not, you cannot overrate that experience. And Marty St. Louis knows. He knows what he needs to develop in Montreal, and it's not just how to make Cole Caulfield a 50-goal scorer and Nick Suzuki an 82-point player. He needs to make sure that those guys develop into players that, you may not look at right away on paper and say, oh, yeah, he's a bona fide one of the best first-line players in the league. But you look at them and say, wow, they do it all. And if they do it all, you're going to
win. Which 2 goalies are we going to see on the weekend for the Canadiens?
That's a good question. I don't have the answer. I'd like to think that Montembeault plays one of them, but I don't know.
Are you going to be at the games on the weekend?
I sure am.
Yeah, I'll be there on Saturday, I think. I like to, because I bring you this show, of course, during weeknights. I cannot attend the games on weeknights because I'm here in my studio at 10 o'clock. But on Saturdays, I have the chance to attend the game, and I think on Saturday I'm going to be there. Sunday, it's a Super Bowl weekend, and it's an all-day affair type of thing. But I think Saturday I'll be there.
I think you could. I think Primo and Allen probably play this weekend.
Yeah,
I think that's probably
Sunday. The day of the Super Bowl is the day that you actually stay home. You get all the food ready. You get all the food ordered that you have to. You sit down. You watch the Canadiens at 1. By the time it's 3:45, the game's over. You relax. You prepare some more food. You order some more food. You get ready for the game, the Super Bowl, which starts off at around 6:30 or whatever it is. Then you watch that. So Sunday's one of those either stay home or get invited to a friend's house type of thing for all day. But anyway, listen, this was a lot of fun. Thank you very much for joining me, and I'll see you on Saturday.
It was a blast. It was a great conversation.
All right.
Hope to see you there.
Thank you. He is the voice of reason. Probably pretty much anyone is compared to me. He's Eric Engels of Sportsnet and sportsnet.ca. Thanks, Eric. For all of you watching, leave us a 5-star review on Apple. The most difficult part of this business, I'll be really honest and transparent with you, as I pretty much always am, by the way, is having people leave comments that are positive comments, or like the podcast, or like the job that you do, or whatever. People will always let you know if they don't like what you're doing, if they don't agree with you, they don't like the production or whatever. People hardly take the time to tell you that they love the podcast. I'm pretty proud of our podcast. There's a lot of them out there. We bring you Montreal Canadiens coverage 5 times a week, 12 months a year, with collaborators like Eric Engels, Maxime Lapierre, Mike Johnson, Craig Button, Pierre Maguire, George Larac, Grant McCagg, Simo the Snake Boisvert, Charles-Alexis Brisebois. The list goes on and on. Stu Cowan. 5 podcasts per week. 5. Not 1 per week. Not 2. 5. 12 months a year with those collaborators. If you can leave us a 5-star review on Apple, it really is our way of feeling the love, and we very, very much appreciate it. If you like the show tonight, like it, share it, comment sick, S-I-C-K, S-I-C-K, to you, my sick community, and you, my sick army. I absolutely love you, and I love our partners and our sponsors as well. Energy Transportation Group, love you. La Bita TB, love you. Playground, love you. Accent Insurance Solutions, love you. Agnello, Sammy, and Juliana at Master Control, love you too. They're Cavallaro. I'm Marinaro. Talk to you again tomorrow night, same time, same place.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow The Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. The Sick Podcast is brought to you by Energy Transportation Group, driven to be different. La Vida TV, embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination.